If you can hear me, please put it in the chat. Awesome. So Robin can hear me now. All right. So at the beginning, I was trying to connect my sound. It was not connecting and my computer shut down. So this is what happens when you have a million files on your computer, including video. So I've got some computer cleanup to do. All right, everybody, welcome. This is awesome. So it's a little on the low side. Let me try to turn that up. Let me see if I can get my audio input capture device to turn up. Can you guys hear me now? Awesome. All right, so I've got the volume about as high as I'm going to get it using the auxiliary microphone that I have. So we are going to be working on our favorite things project today. So let me show you what we're going to do, because I'm going to spend my time talking about free motion applique. So that's what we're working on today. All right, so my name's Yvonne. If you're new, please welcome to the Jelly Roll Club. I'm going to put my glasses on so that I can see. I'm going to show you how I set up my sewing machine to do the free motion style quilting that I do. I do like a sketchy applique. I use it for both. And let me just show you what we've got here. If you are new to the channel, this is where you find all of the resources. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to share my desktop. And it is www.jellyrollclub.com. You go to my favorite things, and we are down here working on a ball of yarn and some knitting needles today. So that's what we're working on today. And so let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to focus on the applique part. You guys have seen a lot of the other stuff. And so today I'm just going to show you how to actually do the stitching, because there's a lot of stitching on this yarn ball. Okay? All right, everybody. Now that you guys can hear me and we've got everything working as it should, you should see both of my hands. And there we have it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've already drawn, for those of you who are wondering, I've already drawn the yarn ball onto this piece of fusible web. So my little yarn ball will end up going in reverse image. And so I'm going to go ahead and heat up my iron, and I'm going to show you what I'm using today. I've got a Teflon pressing pad. I like using those. I've got my pattern here that I used. I just traced it regular. I didn't reverse it. I didn't think it was necessary, because it doesn't matter which direction the little yarn ball goes. I have a piece of fabric that is tone on tone. If you notice, it has a little texture. I put that on the inside of the quilt because this kind of fabric can develop what I call quilter's dandruff. That's where this kind of flakes off. So I'm not using that side today. I'm using the back side. Fabric has two sides. You pay for both of it, so use whatever side you want, right? I'm going to center this. And that's just so I can kind of center my design. This is a tiny bit wider than what my finished size is going to be, so I always just kind of center it and then trim it when I'm done sewing. Okay, so this has been washed and pressed, and I'm going to press this on the back of my fabric. I'm going to use a bright yellow today. So I like this batik. Batiks don't ravel, and I think this is going to make a fun yarn ball. So I've got this right here, and I'm just going to lay it so that this little yarn dangle goes off the edge like this. This is a little extra bit, so I'm just going to chop it off and not waste my fabric if I don't have to. All right, so now that I've got this pretty much where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and give her a press. 15 seconds for this kind of fusible web that I'm using. So you just kind of give her a good press. And then we can let it cool before we start cutting. So a lot of times what I do is I'll just take, you see the black off my iron? Be careful what's on your iron. So this iron definitely needs cleaned from all this starch residue. And that happens when you're pressing quite a bit of stuff with some starch in it. so off we go. And this is a cream color background, so I definitely don't want anything dark getting all over mine. All right, while we're waiting for this to cool, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting my yarn ball. And I'm going to leave this thread bit attached. I'm not going to separate this little thread bit because I don't want it to be sticking out or haloing when I'm doing all of this. So I'm just going to turn the corner. And it helps if you have a little tiny pair of scissors. Anytime you're doing something curvy, I always pull out little curvy scissors, and that just kind of helps. It's less annoying too than trying to mess with that. I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to try to keep that little yarn piece that's sticking out kind of even. And then I'm going to come here and I'm going to stop. And I'm going to turn my my scissor, and I'm going to go right here because what I don't want is to end up with a weird little cut right there. All right. So now that I've gotten rid of that, I can go ahead and use this sharp pointed scissor, and this is cool now. And I'm just going to score that and pull that off. As you can see, this leaves a shiny finish, and that's just my glue. All right, so now I have this little dangle of yarn. Just have to make sure that I put it where I want it. I can leave it with my dangle going this way or my dangle going the other way. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I kind of get it centered, and this little bit of yarn is going to just lay right there. Now, you can do this with a needle turn if you wish, but I'm not going to. And then I also need my knitting needles. My knitting needles can go opposite direction. They could go same direction. It doesn't even matter where you put those little knitting needles, but you need those needles. So I'm going to take, and what I always keep whenever I'm working on a project like this is I put my little scraps on my accent color. This is black. This is a friction pen. I'm just going to use one of these to cut my little knitting needles. And so I'm just going to take this piece right here, and I'm going to freestyle those because, let's be honest, it's not that complicated. So I'm just going to take this piece and I'm going to cut nice and straight 2 little skinny knitting needles. Be careful when you're cutting this close to your finger that you don't chop your skin. I've done that before, and it's not fun. All right, so this is going to be very, very skinny. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice that in half. Like I said, when you're working with a little pair of scissors, it usually works out better. Now I'm not putting those little balls that you see up here on my knitting needles because I'm going to put those on with my, I'm going to put a little heart at the top of these knitting needles. So I'm going to put a little extra on there. So I've got these knitting needles, and you can do the one that's far away, a little bit skinnier, and the one that's a little bit closer, a little bit bigger. That kind of gives it perspective. This is yellow, so you're going to be able to see that. So I want to make sure that I pull that back. Then I'm going to trim it. And I can save that for later. I can go like this. You can also do them in silver if you want your knitting needles to look a little bit more realistic. Now, because this is my favorite things, and on all of my blocks, if you notice this one has a heart, if you notice the little embroidery one is a heart, the little sewing machine has a heart. I'm going to add a heart to this one. And so I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 little tiny hearts to the ends of my knitting needles. I think that's going to serve me best. And so I just need to cut little tiny hearts that I'm going to sew around. And just get rid of all of this fuzz. We don't need that. What do you guys think? 2 little knitting, 2 little hearts right there? I think so. So I've got a little bit of leftover of this fusible web, and I just use every scrap. And so I'm going to take my Teflon sheet to protect my surface, and I'm just going to press that for 15 seconds. All right, if you guys can hear me, if you guys have any questions, let me know. All right, I've got this little thing here, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a couple of little tiny little hearts. You don't even really have to draw them. You can just kind of freestyle them if you want. But I'm going to use my friction pen, and hopefully this is cool enough that I'm just going to cut 2 little hearts. And I'm just going to kind of, no, it's too warm still. I can't draw with my friction pen, but let me see if I have a pencil in here. I've got a Sharpie. I'm just going to take and I'm going to draw 2 little hearts like this. And I'm going to put those little hearts on the end of my knitting needles. So instead of these little things that look like eyeballs, those little blobs, I'm going to add hearts. Because every single thing in this quilt will have a heart somewhere. Either a little hidden heart or a visible heart. And so cut out these little things right here. And put them on the ends. I think I want my little knitting needles to look like this. What do you guys think? I think that's a yes. And so now that I have this, you can do the same thing to yours. You can make your hearts bigger, smaller. Doesn't really matter. Just play with whatever you've got in your sewing room. And I think that that's how I'm going to do mine. Just like that, my little knitting needle. Okay, so I have that there. I need to remove all of the paper from all of this. So that's what I have my little tiny scissors for. And then I'm going to go ahead and give everything one good press before I start drawing my yarn line. So if you notice, my ball of yarn has all of these lines that go through there that make it look like yarn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all of this with gray thread so that I can make it look just like a ball of yarn instead of a circle. And so that's what I'm going to do. So right now I'm going to press, put that on there, and then I'm going to use my friction pen, which will erase, but it can also leave a little bit of haloing, but I'm not concerned because I'm going to be sewing right over those lines. All right, so here I go. I'm going to press through this pressing cloth. And I'm just going to take my time, and when I get to those little hearts, I'm going to pick up my iron and I'm going to put that down. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want those to move and leave a gluey mess somewhere. And so using a Teflon pressing sheet or using pressing paper is a good idea so that you don't end up getting icky black stuff on your white fabric. All right, so that looks like it's stuck on there, and that's fabulous. That's what I want. And so I'm going to let this cool down because I'm going to be using my friction pen, and this is heat erasable, so it will go away. And so I'm going to start about where my knitting needles are, right here, and I'm going to go like a half moon. So I'm just going to take this right here. Let me see if it's still too hot. Yeah, look what it's doing. As I'm drawing, it's erasing because it's erasable. But you can always do that with a pencil, but just give it a second to cool down before you start drawing, and then it'll let you draw. Okay. So I'm going to come in here While that's cooling, I'm going to set up my machine. There we go. So I'm just going to come like this, and that will keep erasing until that cools down completely. All right, let me get a pencil because that's annoying right there. Pencils are my second favorite tool because they erase completely when you wash, but I'm just going to do a light, very light line like this. And that's just my starter line. From there, I'm just going to draw about every ½ inch a contour line that comes across, just like that. Very light, so you can barely see it. There it comes. You're just drawing those contour lines that you can barely see, and that's for this section of the ball of yarn. Then I'm going to come from that section, and I'm going to come this way, and I'm going to draw contour lines this way that kind of stop about there. Then I'm coming in here and I'm going the opposite direction, and I'm doing contour lines this way. And see where they meet? This is where I'm going to end up doing my back and forth. And then last but not least, I need contour lines in the center, and all of these will erase, and these are going to kind of end up here. And the reason I have like a vanishing point for these is because when I come through here and do free motion quilting, I want to have a stopping point that's going to take me to the bottom. All right, so let's do the hard stuff now. So now that I have all of this, one of the things that you can do, and this is all starched, if you notice this is nice and stiff, is I don't need any interfacing behind there because I'm going to free motion quilt. And so let me make sure that my sewing machine camera is working and that the sound is working. All right, can you guys hear me when I'm at my camera? If I turn away, it's gonna reduce the volume. But the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a darning foot or a free motion foot on my computer, or my sewing machine, and I'm gonna pull quite a bit of thread. So I remove my regular foot off of here. And I have a brand new 9014 top stitching needle, which is a great big needle. You thread that. See if that's threading. No, it's not. Sometimes you just have to stick your finger back there so you can see the hole. Okay, so I'm going to pull quite a bit of thread, about 12 inches. I'm going to use the same thread in the bobbin that I have up here, which is a medium gray. I'm going to stick that down below, and I'm going to pull that when I put my fabric in there. So I'm not going to pull it until I get my fabric. So I'm going to lay my fabric in there, close the hatch, and the first thing that I'm going to do is this big ball of yarn. I can do that last. So I'm going to take and I'm going to start right here at either this vanishing point or this vanishing point, because what I want to do is I want to come around and end up here. And the reason I want to do that is because it reduces the number of times I have to overlap. And so I've attached my camera to my table, so hopefully it won't shake too much and you'll be able to get a super close eye bird's view of what I'm doing. Okay? So let's just go down. So you're going to drop that all the way down, and tweezers are very helpful, or little skinny like this, like scissors, anything like that. So if you have tweezers, these are really helpful when you're free motion quilting. And so I'm going to leave that in the down position. I'm going to pull the thread up from the bottom, and I'm going to drag it up. And so it's come up through the hole, which is perfect. That's what I want. Now I'm going to lift this. I'm going to tweeze it up out of there. Because a lot of times, a lot of the videos don't show you how to get started, but I want you to see how I start. And so now I can line it back up, one stitch away from where I started, and both of these little tails are going to be in my hand. I'm just going to kind of hold them. My stitch length is a regular stitch length at 2.0, and I'm going to turn this so that it's towards me, I'm going to pull this back a little bit so you can get a better view. There we go. This is pointed towards me, and I'm going to slowly sew right where I came in. And I'm going to start down this line. I'm going to come across and up this line because I want to make sure that my stitches are nice and even. So I'm just going to start there, and I'm pushing it with my hand. So the stitch length depends on how quickly my hand and my feet are going. I'm going to stop with my needle down, and I can go ahead and come over here and just prune those off. And now I'm ready to continue. So here I go. I'm going to follow that contour line by turning my hands. My foot has a little notch right here, which tells me where the needle is traveling, and that helps me to line up my pieces. So if you have a foot that's like that, good for you, use that. But I'm just turning it. And slow is better than fast when it comes to this. I'm going to stop right there. Needle down before I pivot. And so now I have my nice line. Look at that. Super straight. A lot of times you guys don't get to watch this process because I do this away from the camera, but I thought today would be a great day for you guys to watch me do some free motion applique so you can see what this looks like. And so I'm using my hands flat and relaxing my shoulders to get this where I want to. Okay, so now I need to look at my piece carefully and see where I can come down this yarn bit and come back without having to do a bunch of backtracking. And so this is a good spot. If you notice, I drew those lines so that one was on one side of the yarn and what was on the other. Do you guys have questions about what I'm doing? So now I'm going to come here, and this is where I'm going to use my thumbs like this to kind of guide. If you notice, my hands are usually like in a diamond shape like this. When I'm free motion quilting, I have the most control that way. And it works better if you travel toward yourself. Make sure that your presser foot is down, because if your presser foot is not down, this is going to get an ugly bird's nest underneath. And just stop and pivot and continue towards yourself. And pivot. This is in real time so you can see this is not a race at all. And so see how this is tracing around that very nicely. And it's like an outline because I've used gray. Now, for whatever reason, machines don't like to travel sideways. I've learned that the hard way. So I turn my piece and I try to travel with the piece going towards me, and I push it kind of away from my body. I try not to cut my fingers because then it can create a mess. And if my stitch length is too tight or I'm too slow, then I end up with messy stitches. So you gotta kind of have to watch what works for you. I get to the end, I pause, I flip it around, and I come back the other way. Now that I've been talking you through it, I'm gonna come more at a normal speed like I normally do. I'm going to slow it down just a hair for my turn. If you notice that you're getting skipped stitches, then you need to check your needle. Make sure your needle is sized correctly. I'm using a 9014 top stitch needle. All right, I ended up exactly where I started. And so now I have my little tail, and I'm really close to that edge, and I like how it turned out. So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to zigzag back and forth because that's going to get me the best set of lines for this yarn ball. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to pull it towards me because I get the most even stitches that way. I'm going to travel sideways just a hair, and then I'm going to come towards me. Using my hands as flat as I can, I'm going to go over just a hair, kind of to that vanishing point, and then I'm going to rotate it so it's going away from my body like this. And that'll get me the smoothest, neatest lines. Now I'm going to stop right there. And where I drew those lines, I'm going to come here and zigzag back and forth so that I'm not overlapping a bunch of times. And that will give me the best lines for my yarn ball. And I wanted you to watch me do this because it takes a lot of practice to learn where to draw your lines and how to trace your other lines. So I'm going to go right here. I'm coming back around. I'm going to stop. I can come this way now. Come around. I'm going to stop, pivot, pivot again. And when you're free motion quilting, your shoulders will feel tight because for whatever reason you want to shrug your shoulders. Stop frequently and give yourself a shoulder shake because that'll prevent neck pain. I don't want you to have neck pain working on these blocks. All right. And now I'm coming down. I'm going to pause here and I'll be able to take one stitch all the way down and then come down the other way. And so that's just what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to come across here. I'm going to kind of divide that because that yarn line ended up being a little bit too thick. So I'm going to push one side with my hand. If you have machiner's gloves or quilting gloves, these are helpful. You don't need them. You can also put a little bit of athletic tape on the ends of your fingers. I do that sometimes. Or if you have those little rubber finger things, you can do that too. All right. So now I'm going to come across here. I'm going to pause. Come back the other way. And just like that, my friends, you get all that fun texture on your applique. You gotta go one extra stitch. Make sure you're on that line. And travel slow, rotate. And this just takes practice. After a while, you're going to be so good at it, you're going to be surprised. But this takes a little bit of practice. I'm just coming back. And then I'm going to travel again along that edge. And I'm going to push that towards that line. And then I'm going to come one more time around here and I'm going to close it off. I'm going to travel all the way around to kind of outline my piece. And then I'm going to finish with those little tiny knitting needles. Now I could switch my thread and use black on those knitting needles, which I might because I'm kind of picky. And I don't know that I want to use gray because it's going to be too visible. But I needed gray on this yellow because it's going to make it look more like yarn. You could use yellow. You can use a color that's a little bit darker than your yarn ball, and that will help it too. But I'm just going to come around one final time all the way around to make sure that all of this yarn ball is stitched in place. I'm not going to cross over that little piece because I like how it looks. And then if I want to, I can come back around one more time just to kind of give it a nice dark outline. I usually don't go over my outline more than 3 times, but I like to kind of give it a heavy line that makes sure that this is washable, that this is nice and anchored on there, and that you're going to have less fraying over time. I'm just using my hand like this. If you notice, I'm just guiding it like this. I'm going to stop right here, go into that line across the top. Use both hands. Get a nice disappearing point right here. Let it come back. Turn it around. And now I'm going to outline across the top so that this line is just as thick as the other one across the bottom. So what I'm doing is, some people will call it thread sketching, but I'm just using my sewing machine to add as much detail as possible. I'm going to come back around, and I'm going to try to go right over the top of the last one. All right, I'm going to go for it, friends. If I don't like it, I can redo this one. If I don't like this one, I can always use a Sharpie marker over that thread, and you won't see it. All right, that little tiny heart is little, so you really have to spin that around. Just like that. One more time. And then you come around. You know what? I'm not hating this. This is looking okay. You never know until you try. So I do like how this turned out. That little outline of the gray looks just fine on that. But if you notice, my fabric is puckering ever so slightly, and that actually comes out when you press it. And then when I quilt around this, that won't even be noticeable. But it can happen if you don't put interfacing behind your little tiny pieces of applique. It can happen. So I'm just going to come around. That skipped a stitch. If you notice, I didn't like how that turned out. See how that I wasn't able to turn it and that skipped a stitch? So how I fix that is I'm going to pull my needle like this. And it's important for you guys to see that. So this one here, for whatever reason, it didn't come around and it's as ugly like that. So I'm going to pull it right then and there. And then I'm going to use this extra sharp pair of scissors to remove that section. And I'm just going to pull it like this. And I'm going to go back to the section that I didn't like. And I'm going to get rid of that. Now, this is another reason why if you use thread that's the same color as your applique piece, you don't notice the mistakes. But if you use a contrasting color and you make a boo-boo, just go in there and remove the thread, tie it off. You can use a little fray check, and then I can come back and do it again because I want it to be pretty. I don't want it to look messy. So again, I'm going to bring it back up. I'm going to start right there. I have to pull this out. This is why you do like 18 inches, because if you don't, kind of wants to go back on you. So I'm going to start back at the little heart, the tip of the heart where I was. I need to put that down where I'm going to start, drag that straight into my applique, pull it up, and when it brings the thread from the background, just like that, then I'm going to bring it out together. So I'm going to lift that. I'm going to bring both pieces out through the bottom. So I'm bringing the bobbin thread up. And wherever that bobbin thread is, I'm going to pull it tight. I'm going to lower my presser foot. I'm going to pull those tight and I'm going to drop a stitch in there. And then I'm going to make sure that I have it so that it's facing me. And then I can go around the heart the way I want to. There we go. If you have it facing you, it makes it easier to do that. Now I can go ahead and trim that and come back around and do some cleanup. So I'm going to come down the other side. To back tack, I'm just going to come across here a couple of times. And then I'm going to just break that thread, and this part is done. And so let me show you what this looks like. There we have it. My feed dogs are not down. My sewing machine has, so let me just show you my sewing machine. My sewing machine has a plate, and so I have a feed dog adjuster, and so my feed dogs can go completely down or they can be partially down. So that's completely down. If your sewing machine has dropping feed dogs, drop your feed dogs. I leave my feed dogs up just a tiny bit in this position just because it helps me to turn. You have another pattern for those of you who like to crochet. I would do these lines first, and then I would come back and do a little V pattern back and forth to make it look like crochet. The loops on my crochet are going to be done with probably with yarn because I want them to be three-dimensional, and so I'm going to actually put this on there and then make my little loops with yarn and do a little blanket stitch across mine because I want mine to be really, really realistic. Or you can do it with embroidery floss, but you can do a little blanket stitch to make it look realistic. And so if you notice, there is my yarn ball. It's all finished up. I like how it looks. I'm going to go ahead and heat up my iron, and I'm going to press it from the back. So if you notice, this is looking pretty good. I don't have too many boo-boos. And I like how this is looking. So if you notice, I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to just kind of tease with my finger those threads that were a little bit tight. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of relaxing all these back threads. And then I'm going to give it a press from the back. And that should fix any problems that I had. Yep. I'm going to come in here and give it a good hard press. And this has a lot of starch on it because I starched the background piece. And look at how nice and flat that's turning out. So it's not a problem that it looked a little bit wrinkly. It turned out really, really nice. I like how that looks. My little knitting needles have little hearts, and now I can just trim this little place where I had the little start and stop. And I'm going to give it a drop of fray check right there. And I like how it looks, even with the gray. If I decide I change my mind and I don't want that, I can always take a little Sharpie and literally go over the thread, and I won't even see that again. So if I don't want that, I can just go over it with a Sharpie marker or a fabric marker or a Pigma pen. And that's it, friends. This is how it looks. Please, if you like what you see on my channel, share this stuff with other people. Give it a thumbs up. This is my favorite method of applique. Once you do some dense quilting on the back, it looks pretty. If you've noticed, I've been putting together my Krabby Patty. So if you are doing an ocean-themed Krabby Patty, do that one. If you want me to do a video separate just for the crochet, let me know and you can put that in the comments, and I will do one separately just for the crochet. So if you want to see the crochet and you want to see me do the little other little quilting, this is super easy. All right, friends, this is how I made my little dimensional looking yarn ball. I like how she turned out. I will see you guys next week. Let me see what's on the calendar so you guys can check it out and join me. So let me share my desktop really quick. Let me shrink that down. So if you look on my calendar, let me close this one. All right, too many windows, friends. All right, let me share my desktop. This is what I have. If you go to my Facebook page, I've already shared my calendar, and next week we're doing the bog coat. So for those of you who are waiting for part 2 of the bog jacket, that's what we were working on today. We are working on the no waste bog coat lesson 2. I'm going to be cutting up my giant rectangle that I've been working on, so I've got to quilt it. For those of you who want to see it and want to see a preview of what I've been working on, I will be happy to show that to you. So let me grab it. So for those of you that want to see what I've been working on, this is my rectangle for my bog coat. It's just one giant piece of fabric. And what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to put it on, I'm going to put this and I'm going to quilt my sandwich. And so this is going to be my bog jacket. It's just like my other one. And I'm super excited because all I've got to do is quilt one giant piece. And this is going to be my coat and there's going to be nothing left over. So if you're excited and you're ready for that, we're going to be doing that next Sunday. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you guys next Sunday for the No Waste Bog Coat. And if you want this project, go ahead and go to my website, www.jellyrollclub.com. It is free to download. Go ahead and grab those. And this is called My Favorite Things, so there's a little heart on all of my pieces. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me.